Lucky Girl by Jamie Pacton, a First Chapter Friday read aloud video and author interview.
Today, as you listen, watch for the story quote that will appear on screen. Write it down word by word and then follow the instructions given to you by your teacher.
Hi, I'm Amanda Zebo. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd, and another First Chapter Friday video. This week, I'm going to be reading to you the first chapter of the YA book Lucky Girl by Jamie Pacton, and you're going to want to make sure to stick around to the end because after I read, I'm going to be talking with Jamie and asking her 5 questions about this story and her writing process. But before I do that, and before I read to you, I want to ask you a question. What would you do if you won the lottery? It's super fun to daydream about, right? I know personally after I gave a bunch of the money away, I would likely open a bookstore and I would do basically what I'm doing with you now, sharing my love of reading to all sorts of people, but being able to do it in person and also having a really cool space to write and access to smoothies and lattes, which also make me happy. What would you do? What would you use your money for if you won the lottery? I'm going to leave the comments open so you can share your ideas down there, but I think we'll see what Jamie's answer is, like I said, after we read the first chapter and talk with her. So the reason I ask you this question is because that is the position that Fortuna Jane, the main character in this story, finds herself in. Here's what this book is going to be about. $58,642,129. That's how many dollars 17-year-old Fortuna Jane Belleweather just won in the lotto jackpot. It's also about how many reasons she has for not coming forward to claim her prize. Problem number 1. Jane is still a minor, and if anyone discovers she bought the ticket underage, she'll either have to forfeit the tickets or worse. Problem number 2. Let her hoarder mother cash it. The last thing Jane's mom needs is millions of dollars to buy more junk. And then problem number 3. Jane's best friend, aspiring journalist Brandon Kim, declares on the news that he's going to find the lucky winner. It's one thing to keep her secret from the town. It's another thing entirely to lie to her best friend, especially when, problem number 4, Jane's ex-boyfriend Holden is suddenly back in her life and he has big ideas about what he'd do with the prize money. As suspicion and jealousy turn neighbor against neighbor and no good options for cashing the ticket come forward, Jane begins to wonder, could this much money actually be a bad thing? Let's find out as we read. Chapter 1. What do most people do when they find out they've won the lottery? Cry? Scream? Jump up and down? Quit their jobs? Call their mom or their best friends? Or, fun alternative version to all that, they could take my approach and be sitting quietly in math class, chewing on their bottom lip and trying not to faint. Hi. Yes, my name is Fortuna Jane Belleweather. I'm 17, and I've just found out I was the sole winner in last night's huge lotto jackpot. Like $58 million huge. I'm freaking out, to say the least. And look, okay, I get it. Nobody feels sorry for lottery winners. I mean, it's hard to have sympathy for someone who can potentially make all their problems disappear with outrageous amounts of money. But as I'm quickly finding out, in the space between potential winner to actual winner to appearances on luxury lotto lifestyles, there's a Pacific Ocean's worth of doubt, worry, and fear. There's also ample space for panic attacks, like the one I'm having right now, in the middle of math class. Outside my classroom windows, a brisk October wind howls, making bare oak branches slap against the glass. Inside the classroom, I'm trying to breathe normally and stop my hands from shaking harder than the trees. I'm failing spectacularly. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'm about to start some deeply unhinged cackling soon, and I can feel the laugh sitting like a lump of unswallowed sandwich, stuck in that spot where my collarbones meet. Assuredly, hyena-style laughter during math class is a terrible idea, but at this point, I'll do anything to decrease the pressure of this absurd $58 million secret before my head actually explodes. Deep breath in. Hold it. Deep breath out. I count my breaths and think about numbers because numbers are concrete and they make sense. There's strength in numbers, right? Okay, here are some numbers. For the last 5 years, my mom has played the lotto religiously. Every week, she spends exactly $43, a third of her check from working at Sammy's Storage Solutions, on lotto tickets. The rest of her check barely keeps us alive, which is sort of fine because we live in a paid-off house Mom grew up in, and there's still some money left from my dad's life insurance. Back to the numbers. Multiply those $43 by 52 weeks and then multiply that by 5 years for a grand total of $11,180 that my mom has spent on the lotto since we moved to Lakesboro, which is probably only slightly more than what the guy in front of me in math class spent on hair gel last week. Ha! More unhinged cackling. Breathe, woman. Breathe. Okay, right, the numbers. So the amount of money I have in my pocket is approximately $5,245 times $11,180. And now we're back to it, $58 million, or to be more precise, $58,642,129 that I have in my pocket during math class on what started out as an ordinary Thursday. All of which is absolutely, entirely, totally, mind-bogglingly absurd. And which I also just found out about 3 minutes before class when I popped into the bathroom to check the winning lotto numbers on my phone. Yes, I nearly passed out on a toilet. And no, I haven't told anyone yet, but I'm getting to that part. To say I'm bewildered is like saying you should probably pack a sweater for a trip to Antarctica. Ha ha ha! Jokes at a time like this! Deep breath. I think it's likely I'm in shock because I'm just sitting in class all casual with $58 million in my pocket. But there you have it. Last night I impulsively bought a ticket with my last dollar and it won. I keep making myself say it in my mind. I won the lottery. I won the lottery. I won the lottery. I won the lottery. Fortuna Jane Belleweather, calls out my math teacher, Ms. Wallace, peering at her attendance sheet. Are you paying attention? Mr. Hairgel in front of me snickers. Yeah, Tuna, are you paying attention? I poke him hard with a pencil eraser, which he probably thinks is flirting now that I'm single again. I've worked hard not to learn his name since he also thinks my first name is the funniest thing he's ever heard. My mom thought naming me Fortuna was a smart bet for ensuring me a life of good luck. Maybe she was right given my current lotto winner status, but it also highlights how terrible her judgment is. Seriously, what kid ever wanted a name with the word tuna in it? It's Jane, I remind Ms. Wallace, who likes to deploy our full names as weapons. And yes, I'm paying attention. We're talking about paramedics. Parabolas. The class laughs. Care to elaborate? Ms. Wallace arches a perfectly drawn eyebrow. 14, hisses my best friend Brandon Kim from the seat behind me. The curve of that parabola is 14. I repeat what he says and Ms. Wallace goes back to her droning lesson. I whisper thanks to Bran and head back to feeling like Charlie Goddamn Bucket in a pale orange Mega Wins ticket burning a Bentley-sized hole in my pocket. I still can't believe I won. I mean, what are the odds of that? Actually, I know the odds because I've been covertly Googling since the start of class. There was a 1 in 300 million chance I would be the sole winner of last night's jackpot. That's right, 1 in 300 million. Also, according to Google, it's more likely I'd date a supermodel, get hit by an asteroid, achieve sainthood, and be eaten by a shark all at the same time, rather than win the whole jackpot by herself. Which is something my brain refuses to wrap itself around. I keep thinking about it and then bouncing off the truth of my newfound wealth like a kid bopping around in a giant bounce house. Except it's a lot less fun. Maybe I'm like that kid who keeps falling out of the bounce house and landing on her face, or the one who keeps slipping and getting pummeled by the other kids, or whatever. For perspective, yesterday I had $24 in my bank account, and today I have $58 million in my pocket. To keep from having a full-blown panic attack, I doodle a picture of me and my supermodel date swimming in a shark-infested water while an asteroid races toward us. I make sure to include a halo over my head. Supermodel shark star saint, supermodel shark star saint. The ridiculous combo runs through my head like a mantra. Fun as that image is, though, my hand shakes as I sketch, sending a wobbly line across the page. I put down my pencil. Here are some other facts I've also learned since the start of math class. Fact 1, lottery tickets are bearers' instruments, so if I want this money, I better make sure I sign this ticket so no one else can cash it. Fact 2, even if I sign it, I can't cash it yet because a minor in the state of Wisconsin can only cash a ticket if it was bought by an adult and given as a gift. Fact 3, I don't turn 18 for another 2 weeks, but that's not the big issue since I have 180 days to claim the holy shit bursts out Bran. His phone chirps with a series of texts, and everyone in class spins around to look at him. Ms. Wallace stops writing on the whiteboard and turns around, glaring at us all. Is there something you'd like to share, Mr. Kim? Yeah, my dad just texted me. Wanda's Quick Go shop sold the winning Mega Millions ticket last night. One person won the full prize of $58 million, and my dad says it could be somebody in town. Our town is right off the interstate, and Wanda's is one of 2 convenience stores, so there's a chance it could have been bought by anyone passing through. But of course, it wasn't. I shift lower in my seat, making sure the ticket is deep in my jeans pockets. I'm going to have to figure out a better solution for keeping it safe, but I certainly can't pull it out and shove it into my backpack right now. Everyone in class is murmuring. Mr. Hairgel, who is newly 18, tells the girl next to him that he bought 10 Megawins tickets at Wanda's last night. I cringe to think of what he'd spend the prize money on if he had one. Probably a lifetime supply of hair products and a dude bro body spray. All around me, phones come out and everyone begins texting. Ms. Wallace starts to say something about putting phones away, but then she just throws her hands up. Has anyone claimed the prize yet? She asks Bran. Not yet. My dad says news crews are probably coming in tonight. They're going to interview people in town to see if they know anything. My hand slips inside my pocket and I run my fingers lightly over the winning ticket again. It's all about numbers, and last night they called mine. 6, 28, 19, 30, 82. But considering the fever pitch in the classroom has now reached, I'm not sure this is my lucky day at all. So, if you want to find out if Jane does end up feeling like a lucky girl or not, you should totally get a copy of this book, either from your indie bookstore or library or from the link in the description box. Don't forget to tell me what you would do with your lottery winnings if you were Jane in this situation. But now, let's go talk to Jamie Pacton, author of our book. Readers, listeners, here we are with author Jamie Pacton, and we're going to talk to her today about Lucky Girl. Thank you so much for joining us, Jamie. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I have my copy too. The first thing I want to know is where did the story seedling or the spark of the idea for this book first come from?
Sure. And thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk to you about this very Wisconsin book. Like when I was writing this, I was thinking to myself, I was like, I know someone who's going to really want to talk about the Wisconsin things in this book. So let's see. So the story spark. I've answered this question so many times now. Let me make sure I tell it correctly. I guess it really started for a very long time. I just wanted to write a book about the lottery, and I kind of had that in the back of my head. But when I asked myself, why did I want to write a book about the lottery? It's because for so very long in my own personal life, and then in my writing life too, I really thought there was going to be this like magical windfall that would come and change everything. And, in my personal life, that would be the thing that got us out of student loan debt or helped me, send my autistic son to a very, pricey private school. I mean, just, I think we all do this when we see those big jackpots. It's like, what would I do with that? And then it's kind of a boundless sort of bunch of fantasy. And same with book deals. I have a lot of friends who've gotten enormous book deals. And I think there's a sort of baked in idea there that this windfall's coming and it's going to be huge. And that got me thinking about why I would want it, what I would do with it. And then I sort of thought, what would have happened if I had done this at 17 and I couldn't cash the ticket? And it became a whole sort of series of questions there. And what happened in this book that just started with this idea about the lottery and, me kind of always looking for this big windfall, it became this book that was about how much is enough and what it is to be enough and how much do we need. And how does money change people, or does it change people? And so it became this kind of like book form meditation on those questions, but it really just started with like my desire to pay off all my debts to move to Hawaii. And then kind of the fantasies, there. So.
Yeah. And I think we can all relate to that. Like you said, like everybody sees those big billboards. Like my husband and I, his parents lived like 3 hours away. And so we would drive. And as we got into the big city, we'd always see the billboard and be like, oh, what would we do? And it's fun to have those plans. But like the book, discusses, like, it's not all like rainbows and ponies, right? There's some other things to consider. So super interesting to like take what people would immediately think is amazing and like flip it on its head. So That
Well,
was
and on that, like as I did research on lotto winners, and you see that in the book with all those little true stories I put in there, and even I don't know if you saw, you sent it to me, didn't you? About, or somebody sent it to me about in Maryland there was a winner in the small town, kind of like, this is recent, the small town got really, really like wanting to know who won, and people were turning against each other, and people were coming in from out of state, and it was essentially like a real life lucky girl that happened. And yeah, winning the lottery is not all it's cracked up to be at all, according to what I've heard. Yeah.
we just kind of like don't think about that part when we're in our daydreams. So my next question for you, and this stems not only from Lucky Girl, but also your other book, Kit Sweetly, which I loved. Listeners, if you haven't read that one, totally pick up that one as well. But your books are so inclusive. There is a wide variety of people in your cast of characters. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about your decision to do that, because I feel like it's an intentional decision, and also maybe about your process with beta or sensitivity readers to make sure that your characters are authentic.
Sure. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that I deliberately, I mean, I would say that I deliberately set out to be inclusive, but not as like a trendy thing to do or anything like that. Like I would like my books to reflect the real world and my own friends and my own loved ones. And I would hope that teens could see themselves in the people they know and the people who are in their schools as well. So, you know, I have non-binary friends, I have trans friends, I have, you know, people of color who are my friends. I mean, I feel like it's foolish to say that that's not our, like, not a real world experience, you know, like the real world is full of diversity, and all we can do as authors is hopefully try and reflect that back in some way. With that said, I do think there's the piece of, yes, you have to be thoughtful and sensitive about it and understand. And this is actually one thing that was really tricky. I live in this small town in Wisconsin, and there's not a lot of diversity here, nor was there a lot of diversity in the small town in East Tennessee where I grew up. And so I think about that a lot and how that sort of shaped me. But then I lived in Milwaukee for a long time, and I lived in Madison. I mean, I've lived in places, you know, that were not just completely white, but it was a challenge in this book. And I wish I could have done more. I'm Lucky Girl, actually, but I wasn't sure how to do that in this particular town. So I tried to, you know, Jane is bi, her best friend is Korean American. There are people of color throughout the rest of sort of the supporting cast. But it's an interesting balance, I think, on how do we accurately reflect the world? How do we not write too far outside our own experience? And so, I mean, yes, I do try to be inclusive. I mean, I think Kit's got a great big cast of knights across the gender spectrum. And I do, so I loved putting that together. Yeah, I'm sorry if that's a bit of a ramble, but in short, like I am deliberate about it only insofar as I want it to reflect the experiences of my readers and the real world. Yeah, and I hope I'm thoughtful about it. Oh, and sensitivity. Yeah, thanks. Sensitivity readers and critique partners. I do get those. My publisher didn't do any sensitivity readers for this one, so I don't know if you know, but sometimes publishers pay sensitivity readers, and sometimes we just happen to have that sort of baked into our friends. But I had lots of readers help me with this one as well. So I don't know, like I was just thinking about that. I'm writing a very challenging book right now in terms of what it's going to need for sensitivity readers. And I was just talking to a friend about it, and I'm terrified in that book. I can't really tell you much about it. It's not, it's kind of like, it's not the book I'm going to tell you again. It's the one, it's another one. It's kind of further out.
It's top secret project.
But I am, yeah. I'm terrified with that one that I'm gonna get it wrong, and I'm trying to step so carefully. And I don't know, we'll see. Like, it's at least in my mind. I am definitely, maybe we'll have that conversation in 2 years and I'll tell you about the woes of that book, because it is a challenging thing. But I think at all times as a writer and as a white writer and as a woman, as a cis woman, I think that you just have to think, I'm seeing this from my perspective and I'm bringing that, but I can't claim to speak for lots and lots of other people. I guess if that makes sense.
It does. So, it totally makes sense. And I love too, it's not necessarily just like gender roles or race, but you're also inclusive with like all levels of socioeconomic income and also mental illness and grief. And like I just really appreciate the broad spectrum of life that you bring in these books. And I think you do what you're hoping is, you know, showing people a place in the story. So bravo, good job.
Thanks. And, you know, a lot of that stuff came from my own life and my own like living at the poverty line or below it and dealing with a parent with mental illness. And so some of those things are plucked out of my own life and kind of ruminated through years of adulthood and thinking and therapy and things like that. But the book that it is, but I'm glad those resonated too. And I think that that's, I think you see that thread in both Kit and Lucky Girl is like, how do we live on the edge economically or mental health wise, things like that.
Yeah. You kind of hinted to this a little bit, but we're both Wisconsin girls, and I love that you set your stories, at least these two so far, in our state. And so I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the choice to set your stories here versus somewhere else, random in the United States or world, and what you like about it.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, so Kit is set in the suburbs of Chicago, and then they go up to Marquette for the day to hang out. But I do think Lucky Girl is in a tiny little town, like where I live, outside of Madison, and then they go to Madison, and then they go to Milwaukee as well. So I guess a Milwaukee road trip is kind of a requirement. Yeah, not just kidding. I write about the area because this is what I know at this point. I'm from East Tennessee. I've lived all over the country, and I've traveled. And I thought about setting books elsewhere, and I probably will at some point. These books just kind of happen to kind of grow out of this part of the country. I do think, though, my husband and I were just talking about this yesterday as we were like on a long country drive with our kids, and we were looking at all the wildflowers. And this is one of these weird areas that kind of sneaks up on you because we lived in cities here for a very long time. And then we moved to the country to buy a house. And at first we were very like, oh man, this is weird. This is too much. But it's beautiful here. It's absolutely beautiful here. The prairies are beautiful, like the changes in, you know, the sky and the wildlife and the flowers. I mean, it's lovely, but it's nuanced beauty and it's quiet sometimes. And I think like it's my great pleasure to try and show people that. And I would love for someone to read Lucky Girl and be like, wow, I would love to go to Madison. That sounds like such a cool town or something like that. You know? So I'm just trying to share a bit of my love. I went to Marquette and I met my husband there, and I lived in Milwaukee for a very long time. I raised my babies there. So I have a lot of big love for that city too, and the lakefront. And it's just, I just want to share that just a little bit, you know, to kind of, and also kind of, I think the Midwest gets a hard rap. Like, I don't think it always is seen as lovely and as welcoming and as interesting as it actually is. So I feel lucky.
I totally agree. I have all the love for the Midwest. It feels like, especially in the book world, like everything happens on the coast and, you know, maybe a little bit in Chicago. But like, we got so many cool things here and we can be creative, and it's not just about snow and cheese and football. So I love that you can show readers a little bit more about us. In the back of your book, it lists in your bio, it lists several other jobs that you have had. It says that, where did it go? Or maybe it was on your website. Maybe it was on your website when I was looking, but you've had lots of very random, well, not random, but just like a wide variety of jobs. And so I'm wondering, as you were working those jobs, oh, there it was. Okay, now I know where it was. Okay, it says you have been a waitress, a salesperson, a lab assistant, a museum guard, art museum guard, a bookseller, a pool attendant, a nanny, and lots of other weird jobs in between. So I'm wondering, as you were working those odd jobs, were there ever moments where you were like, I am never going to make it as an author? And then other moments where you're like, I am totally going to make it as an author?
Sure. I wanted to be an author for a very long time. I went to Marquette, I got an English degree there. I started as a biochemistry major. I wanted to be a brain surgeon. I worked in a biology lab, and I broke so much expensive glassware. Like I was very clumsy and I was a terrible lab assistant. And so at some point in my sophomore year, I was not doing great in chemistry and I was breaking glassware. And I was like, I am not meant to be a brain surgeon. This is the universe saying you're enjoying your English classes, do that. So I was writing in college, and then after college, this was a different time though. Like I graduated in 2001. There wasn't Twitter. There wasn't the easy access through pitch contests and things like that. I was sending books off, via snail mail. So always trying to get things published. And then in 2003, I worked at Sourcebooks as an intern, and I was really hoping that would turn into a career in publishing. But it didn't, just because we moved and things didn't work out. And so, so all of those odd jobs essentially reflect my time as an English major, and then my time in an English major in grad school, where I was taking the work I could get while my husband was in grad school or things like that. And there were a lot of weird jobs. So there was a lot of times during all of that where maybe I'd get a nibble from an editor or an agent, and I'd be like, yes, this is it, this is happening. And then it wouldn't work out. And so, you really have to learn rejection, I guess, along the way. So I had a lot of moments of this is never happening, but I'm terribly stubborn. I was like, this is going to happen. And so really where I really started to finish books and things was after I had 2 small kids and I was teaching online, and I would write at night. And then one of those books kind of became a finalist in a contest. And I ended up going out to Seattle, where I met one of my best friends, and I met agents, and it sort of opened up, and I tell this story just because it opened up the book world to me in a way that I hadn't understood before. Before it was just me and my stories at home, trying to send them out. And this was like, wow, these are agents, and I have to learn how to pitch them and talk to them. And then my friend Noelle Salazar, who I think you'd probably like her book very much. It's called The Flight Girls. It's historical. It's amazing. Meeting her was like my first person in the writing community. And that kind of just brought me into this whole world that I hadn't understood. And so that was very buoying. And then in 2015, I got into Pitch Wars, which opened up another sort of huge amount of community. And that's where I got my first agent, and everything else just kind of follows from there. But yes, I will say there were many days when I was waiting tables or sitting by the pool trying to write, that I was like, this is never happening. This is just me with my dorky manuscripts trying, and not getting anywhere. But I don't know. I don't give up. And I think my stories are better for having had all that time. But again, I can't emphasize how different the market for an author was back in 1997 to 2005, before access was easier.
It was barely a thing. Thank you for sharing. It was, right? I feel
for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like it's very validating to hear published writers share those struggles and those journeys. I once listened to John Green at an event called NerdCon, and he stood on the stage and he talked about how he used to sell his books by the dozen out of the trunk of his car. And I was like, I do that. I carry my books in the trunk of my car. And so to know that if John Green does that and his books are made into movies, who am I to not start in the same place? So, for anyone else who's sitting by the pool or babysitting and, working on their stories, that's a good place to start. It does not mean that you are not going places. So keep at it, keep writing.
Yeah. And I would say too, when I say by the pool, this was a very sketchy, it was my apartment complex's pool where we got money off rent if we were politicians, and it was dirty and scary. It wasn't quite as glamorous as it sounds, but I also do take, if my kids in swim lessons, I take work to the pool, and I always think that's pretty funny. But yeah, to your point, and John Green is amazing like that. You have to keep going. I think these days, so the double-edged sword of all the Twitter and things like that, like Twitter interactions, contest, is that you get to see people who are very successful very, very quickly. One of my friends, she wrote a book. She had an agent within 3 weeks of finishing it. She had a book deal a week later. You know what I mean? And it's just sometimes that happens because it's the right book at the right moment, right person, whatever it is. But that's not how it is for, I'd say, 97% of people. But we really only hear about the 3% who get 7-figure book deals and get them in a matter of days, so yeah, just all you can do is keep going. And the other thing I would say both about your books and for anyone listening is I think it was my 10th novel or something like that. And now that I have an agent and I have some books out, like we get to go into my backlog and say, could we bring this one forward or something like that? And not all of them, certainly not all of them. But some of them might actually become books at some point. And it's great to have all that material at hand, So that's kind of something to keep in mind too, is just keep moving. Yeah.
That's so timely that you said that, because my blog post today is called Keep Your Writing. And why you shouldn't burn your manuscripts or recycle them or whatever, even when you think they're trash, because someday they might be worth something.
Well, yeah, and you might learn something from them, or you might recycle something from them. And I had actually a manuscript that I love dearly, and my agent read it and was like, nah. My husband's read it, he's like, nah. Oh, I love it so much. It's never going to sell. But it was really I needed to write it. I had a great time writing it. And I've pulled little bits from there into other books. And so that was kind of that was a wasted bit of effort and creativity,
Yeah. No, the words are never wasted. Never. All right. My last question for you, Jamie, is if you had won the $58 million lottery, what are some things that you would have done with that?
This question, of course, changes as my life changes. Since I wrote the book, I've got a sick kid, and I would do all these things to sort of help with that. But my first answer is, of course, always take care of all of us, take care of my family. And then I would definitely go on an extravagant vacation or buy a houseboat or go live in Maui. My dreams are very close to Jane's in some ways. I did want to also be a marine biologist at one point. And so I would love to just live near the ocean. But really, I think what that money would buy is, in addition to being able to help people in both small, because I like the way, I don't want to say too much about it, but I like the way the decisions Jane makes throughout the book. And I would hope that I could make similar decisions in the end, but to use, here's my sensible portion, here's how I'm going to help people with it, and here's how the world will open up to me. Yeah, I don't know. What would you think?
I think, we'd give a bunch away. When my husband and I talk about it, we're like, all right, the daycare our kids went to, and our churches and the schools we work for, and this sports organization, we do so much of that, and family things too. But I would love to have a bookstore, and I know that it's not a huge money making endeavor for people who go that way, but I would love to do it and just be able to share books with people in a way without having to worry about finances. And I would get to have all the coffee and all the books all the time. And that would make me so happy.
And I think that's what money can do. And that's one of the interesting things, because some people, you ask them that question, like, oh, I would buy a Lamborghini, and then I would elevate my lifestyle in this particular way. And I think it's interesting to think about living without pressure of finances. So yeah, you open a bookstore, or I don't know, my husband would there's all these little projects he wants to do that we could do if we didn't have a sitting over our head, or things like that. And I think it's freedom. That's what that much money can give you in many ways. And that's the exciting thing. Because you could be like, oh, I want to go on vacation. Boom, I'm going to go here. It's not so. Whereas the rest of us have to save for a year to get to wherever that is. You just be like, yeah, we've got this long weekend. You're interested in iguanas. Let's go to the Galapagos. It's fine.
Yeah.
That would be amazing,
Yeah.
So I think that's how my lifestyle would change. Spontaneity would be funded and very exciting. Yeah. So,
I agree.
But yeah.
Okay, so last thing, tell us what are you working on next, and also where readers can connect with you and learn more about you and your work.
Sure. Okay. My next project, which is soon to be announced, I just sold a YA fantasy. I'm very excited. Actually, fantasy is my original home, and I wrote Kit, my first contemporary. I wrote it after I had just written this big dark fantasy, and I needed something funny, and I had taken my kid to medieval times. And then after Kit, I had Lucky Girl. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm writing contemporary books now too. So I'm thrilled. I'm so happy to have this YA fantasy coming out. I think it's getting announced soon. So I will tell you that it's a cross between, in my mind, I saw it as a cross between the Radium Girls and the Night Circus or the Starless Sea. So it's very magical. It's got a love story. It's got a sort of tragic heart. My editor says it's a bit like the Radium Girls and then Howl's Moving Castle. So it's just very, yeah. So it's got a magical shop. It's called the Vermilion Emporium. And so again, we'll talk more about that later. And then, so I'm working on that. I'm working on I'm drafting right now another contemporary book while I wait for edits, which I can't tell you about, but that's the one that I'm both very excited and very worried about. Because here's the deal, like in contemporary, I find myself drawn to these ideas. Like I love stories, but I find myself drawn to these kind of like slightly, I don't want to say provocative ideas, but I'm like, I want to also ask hard questions with these books as I'm writing, a teen story. So I don't know. I think I keep writing these trickier concepts than I intend to. But yeah, so I'm doing that. I'm also working on co-writing a book with my friend Noelle, kind of a women's fiction book. And then I'm working backbrain on a middle grade story that my son kind of wants me to write for him. So yeah, that's what I'm working on. Are you working on anything
at one time?
Well, they're all kind of in different stages though, so like one's sold and I'm waiting. The other one I need to draft to get it done by September. The other one's just kind of back brain thinking about it. And then the one with my friend, it's great. It's great to co-write with someone because she can do a chapter and then I get a week off and then I'll do a chapter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I like to be busy. I like to be I have a ridiculous list that I'm staring at right here, my plans for the year. And like, I always overshoot, but it's good. And then you asked me where readers could. Well, it is. And I like to stay busy on these things. And I don't know, it's just, I am a better human if I'm working on a project. Otherwise I start to like spin out and do just, obsess over my dishes. Like, yeah. And you asked me where people can connect with me. I am Jamie Pacton at Jamie Pacton. So JamiePacton, and that's on Twitter, Instagram. My Facebook, I don't really have a Facebook presence, but if you go to my website too, jamiepacton.com, if you want to see my Pinterest boards for things, those are up there. And I also have an email address on there. It's jamiepacton, all one word, @outlook.com. So I am happy to get reader emails. I'm happy to answer writer questions. Yeah, so that's it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. I will make sure to link all of it in the description box. So everybody can connect with Jamie and go read Lucky Girl and Kit Sweetly, and just will wait with bated breath for all the other ones to come out. So thank you so much, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you. And I appreciate all the love for my book you've shown. You're amazing.
You're welcome.
To continue reading Lucky Girl, head to your local library, indie bookstore, or click the link in the description box. Then make sure you check out the rest of the First Chapter Friday playlist. I have tons of great middle grade and YA stories waiting for you, one for each week of the year. This week's mystery quote says, "Maybe the ocean and stars are all we can ask for in a good life." Please like this video and subscribe so you can stay connected for more great First Chapter Friday videos and other videos you can use in your classroom. Happy reading!